Good afternoon, everyone. I'm June Rawl, IPDATE Director, and I'm so happy that all of you could join us together today for our webinar series, Developing a Single Set of Learning Objectives for IET. We know that our IET program must have a single set of learning objectives that really identify specific adult education content. It's got to have workforce preparation activities and workforce training competencies and activities. All these activities have to work together. So I'm really excited today that we're going to focus on a template that's going to help you to guide your IET instruction. Today's facilitator is no stranger to any of us. It's Ronald Cruz from Hillsborough County Public Schools. And you know that Ron runs the Caribe Refugee Program and is also our statewide trainer for IPDATE and national trainer for GED testing service. Before we begin, let's just go over a few of those little housekeeping reminders. You know that you are in listen only mode. If you do have a question, please type it into the Q&A option that is on your screen. Ron and I will be addressing them throughout the webinar. The webinar is recorded and it's archived, and you can share it with other people at a later date or go back and look at it. The PowerPoint today is also loaded, preloaded on the IPDATE website. So with all that, Ron, I know you've got a lot to share, and it's a really interesting topic that I'm sure we're all interested in learning more about. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, June. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to share this information with you guys. I know that there's a lot of you that are thinking about how do I get started? How do I start the conversation? What tools are available to my disposal in order to develop a very solid IET implementation at my school? So in this webinar, we're going to go over what it is, what is the IET, what are the different instructional facilitation modalities for IET, and also we will provide you, just like what June said, all of the tools and templates necessary so that you can now start building that content, building that curriculum into your basic skills curriculum and really start a good and powerful, solid IET program. So IET stands for Integrated Education and Training. It's a career pathways strategy that is really going to bridge adult education and career technical programs throughout the state and actually throughout the nation. It's not really something that we're unfamiliar with because it's part of the WIOA, so that's something that we should have been implementing, and it should guide our students into a more accelerated pathway to achieving their academic and career goals. So IET is really the solid integration of that adult basic skills curriculum with occupational skills, or we often refer to as technical skills. And according to the guidelines in developing an IET program, you must have a single set of learning objectives to guide you through. The single set of learning objectives, which is the focus of today's webinar, is going to guide the adult educator in integrating occupational skills in their daily instruction. How often, to what level, to a degree, that's something that you have to discuss with your career technical person or CTE teacher that is, providing you that information for the integration. So again, like I mentioned earlier, this is something that is embedded into law through WIOA, or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And that was instituted back in July 2015 for several states and districts across the country. Different people have different ways of interpreting this line in the law. However, the goal, they may have different means and implementation, but the overall overarching goal throughout these programs is really an accelerated pathway and ensuring the success of the adult education students so that when they enter the career technical program, they are now equipped with sufficient adult basic skills to use in that career technical program. So it's really important because adult ed is not the end result. It is really the beginning and the stepping stone towards their career goal. They need the skills that whatever they're learning in the adult education program should be relevant and should contribute to their desired goal, whatever that may be. Could be getting into a workforce program or attending a technical college or starting their own business. Students in the career technical program, we hear this a lot in our career technical schools or technical colleges here in Florida, where there's students are struggling in certain courses within the career program because of the fact that they don't have the necessary skill. They do not have enough reading strategies or math techniques or mastery of their facts or mastery of the skills, of the basic skills. That's why they're struggling in certain courses within the career technical program. So really the overall goal is really to accelerate the student's pathway towards this career. Just like what June said earlier, that there are several components that need to be integrated into the IET program. You have to have your adult education and literacy component, which is the basic skills. You have to have the workforce training, which is coming from your technical programs. And then you have to have a workforce preparation, which is a third add-on that we're going to cover today. There are two types of implementation of IET. You can have a program that is fully integrated, okay? And then a fully integrated instruction is really braiding, a really complete braiding and solid braiding between workforce training or your career technical program or your occupational skills program and adult education and literacy. So now how do you braid these two together? How do you make that happen? Well, there's several conditions for a fully integrated instruction to occur. First is that you have to have content alignment. So now when we're looking at the adult basic education, let's say curriculum or standards, now I can't create, an integrated curriculum or alignment with every career technical program out there. Maybe you can accomplish it by doing it with career clusters. But the intention of a fully integrated instruction has to be narrowed down to the career technical program itself. And then once you've identified the career technical program you want to fully integrate into, then you proceed into the content alignment process. There has to be an opportunity for joint planning between the CTE teacher and the adult educator. In addition to that, one of the main components in this fully integrated instruction is that co-teaching component. This means that in a fully integrated instruction, the career technical educator and the adult educator are in the same classroom, providing the instruction side by side. So there's several modalities for co-teaching. However, no matter what happens, it's not like, okay, I go to a 9 o'clock career technical program and then it goes all the way to 12. And then after that, I'm gonna go to my basic skills classroom, may it be ABE or GED prep, and then I'm gonna get my basic skills there. No, that's not how it's supposed to happen in a fully integrated instruction. They have to happen side by side. The content has to be fully braided and fully aligned. Now, we're not there on the fully integrated approach, right? This takes a lot of coordination. This takes a lot of planning and resources on the school itself who's going to implement the IET. What is expected for us in the state of Florida, and which is our goal, is to start incorporating or implementing a partially integrated instruction. So a partially integrated instruction allows for a greater flexibility, just like what this slide says, and it allows you to be able to start the foundations of a fully integrated program. So maybe in a partially integrated instruction, you'll start with a little bit of alignment here and there. You start off with the most problematic career technical skills and then align it with the basic skills that's going to help support that. And then the next year, you identify more skills. And then the year after, you can identify more skills. And now, as you combine those together, you're really building the foundation of a fully integrated program, which will not require anymore at that point so much coordination between the adult educator and the occupational skills teacher. All right, so in a partially integrated instruction, it just has to have some level of content alignment, and it just has to have some type of joint planning. So they're very, very loose in the definition of joint planning in this component because it doesn't happen just like what's going on with a fully integrated program where the career technical teacher and the adult educator have the same planning time. In this case, we just need to set aside time for these people to meet, and it doesn't have to be on a weekly, daily basis. So it could be planned at the beginning of the school year. You can have so many days of planning, of joint planning at the beginning of the school year, and then one at the middle of the school year, and then later on at the end, revisit your plan at the end and meet again to look at your partial integration and what can be improved there. So what I'm going to show you is that the steps on how to get through with all of these things that you have to check off, okay? When you're starting off your IET program. Just like I said, it's very important that you narrow it down to a career technical program that you want to do and implement an IET on. So these are the basic questions that you need to ask yourselves, that you need to meet with maybe your program coordinator, the career technical educator, multiple stakeholders, and really look into what career programs are most in demand, which has it's easy to build a cohort that we can easily transition into a fully integrated program. And then also you need to also think about how much resources is going to require from you. Is it going to give you the best return on investment if you do plan on implementing and developing an IET curriculum? So we have here a template that is available in your in the website where you signed up for this webinar with the participant slides and the workbook for this training. You will find this template. This is the exact same questions that we went over in this previous slide, but it's arranged in a more template, in a template. And then towards the bottom, now you can now weigh in on your answers on each of the questions at the top to determine whether it is feasible to conduct or implement an IET curriculum on a particular program. So let's start off. Once you've decided, let's say, oh, okay, well, one of the things that's very in demand in our district, we have a lot of students enrolled. We have several programs that we're doing it in our technical colleges. Let's just say for discussion's sake, we're going to select licensed practical nursing. Okay, so for the purposes of that. So now once we've identified and crossed our T's and dot our I's with which career technical program to use, now we have to identify what basic skills content will be used to support those occupational skills. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit down with your career technical education expert and scan the occupational skills training curriculum for that program. So all we have to do is, for us, we have to go to the Florida Department of Education website, download the licensed practical nursing curriculum frameworks, and start from there. You're going to now look into that and look into the needs of that program and see, okay, what are the pitfalls or what are the struggle areas in this particular career or in this particular career program that needs basic skills attention. So you have to think about vocabulary. Is there a reading requirement? Is there a certain reading level that they have to be in order to absorb the information? How much or how in depth is the writing skills that's needed? And then last but not the least, are there any math skills that needs to be supported so that when the student gets into those competencies, or when they get into the lesson where the students they have to use those skills, then they will be able to demonstrate some level of mastery. Once you've identified those basic skills, then you need to identify which ones you need to include into your IET curriculum. So in this case, I just made the choice for you. Let's pick out, this is one of the first few competencies in the licensed practical nursing program, is the demonstration of the ability to accurately measure, document, and report vital signs. Okay, so this is very, very basic. There's, I like this one because it has some math, some reading, and some writing components in it. So we're gonna go with that. So now, if you want to know how I downloaded that or where I got this particular standard, the website is on the slide for you to check out later on. And then we're going to talk about, okay, well, this is something that you might want to sit down with your career technical person expert and say, okay, let's clarify the meaning of vital signs. What are they? So that the adult educator can see, okay, well, let me see what are the things that we already do in the adult education classroom that I can slightly tweak to help them. Well, body temperature is there, you got pulse rate, you got respiration rate, and you got blood pressure. This spells a lot of math, right? We measure everything in math, we measure even temperature. So we now can make sure to include measuring thermometers or looking at thermometers and reading that. Maybe we can do an activity in class in math where we have to measure the pulse rate of each other, and then, it's a matter of counting and using a timer, which we all have in our smartphones. Respiration rate is something that's a little bit more difficult to, without the proper tools. But then we can talk about the math in there as far as the concept of rate, okay, and also the concept of percentage. And then in terms of blood pressure, students can easily go into a Walmart or a Publix here in Florida where they can measure their own blood pressure, which is also good for their health, for them to know that. And then they could come to class and talk about the blood pressure readings, and then compare that and talk about ratios and fractions with respect to blood pressure. So now that we've kind of talked it through with the career technical expert what these are, now it's time to put it on a template. So we created a template 1, which is available in your participant resources. Template 1 is where I'm going to type all of this information out. So I'm going to put, okay, maybe I'm going to, the content knowledge that I'm going to focus on is really the definition and understanding really what vital signs are, which I can easily incorporate in my adult basic education classroom, or even in a GED setting. And then I also wanted to narrow down on measuring temperature and measuring blood pressure, 2 of which can be easily done by the student without proper training or, a full-fledged training under that, under the licensed practical nursing program. All right, and then I'm going to now go into the 3rd column of this template, and then now I'm going to spell out clearly what is going to be the math, the ELA, and the workforce prep components. Now, we talked about briefly the math and the language arts, but we have not talked about workforce prep. So workforce prep is that additional component identified in the previous slide I talked to you about, because in order for IET to be solid, you need to have that workforce preparation activity in there. So it's not always going to be present in every content knowledge, but whenever you can, you have to insert that workforce prep. And in our curriculum frameworks in the state of Florida, we already have the workforce preparation activities spelled out at the beginning of our curriculum frameworks. So we can just go to that page, look at what curriculum frameworks are available to me, and then integrate them as I am teaching these basic skills. So now after you've done that, you're going to now go in and think about what activities, going to spell out in greater detail what activities you're going to be doing to address the basic skills need. And keep in mind, this could be happening at the ESL level, because some of our students, certain programs does not require a high school diploma. So therefore, an IET program can happen on an ESOL classroom as well. So that's why I kind of notice it at the top. It says basic/ESL skills. So I just want to point that out. Now let's go back to the contextualized activity. We need to come up with activities in our classroom. It could be an activity, it could be a lesson, a worksheet, a resource, a reading, or article that we can put into to focus and direct attention on the basic skills deficiencies identified in the previous step. So in this case, I'm going to focus on the second one. We talked about measuring and describing a patient's temperature. So what types of activity can I do in my class, in the ABE class, or even in the ESOL class? Maybe I can start teaching my students how to read a thermometer. It could be a Celsius thermometer, or it could be a Fahrenheit thermometer, because they could be using either or. And then in terms of the competencies, again, on English language arts, not only should a licensed practical nurse be able to measure the vital signs, they should be able to communicate that vital signs to the patient, describe it to them whether it's a good sign or it's not, so they have to have the proper language, speaking wise, to communicate that to the patient or to the doctor that's overseeing the case of a particular patient, and also record that information and that description on a particular form. So there's going to be some reading, some speaking, listening, and writing skills involved here that I can incorporate in my ELA standards. So let's look at some contextualized content in math. Just like I mentioned earlier, I could do some worksheets. These are widely available online. There's lots of, whichever website is your go-to site for worksheets. This one is commoncoresheets.com, may it be mathaids.com. There's a ton of places where you can get measurement worksheets with them. So this time I'm using a worksheet on from commoncoresheets.com, and it's reading the Celsius thermometer. I know it's a Celsius because it goes from 0 to 100, okay? So now I can now do this with then spend some time talking about measurement with my class, which is part of the adult basic ed standards. Do some maybe some word problems. I can do integers, exercises with it. So I can still use all of the same skills and activities that I normally do. I'm just using it in the context of a thermometer. Keep in mind that you can always bring a thermometer to class and use that, and maybe we can compare temperatures and all that. It might be even very good to do right now, and especially now we're in the midst of a pandemic. Just keep in mind also, while you're at it, talk about the basics of handling the thermometer, because most thermometers contain mercury, that is a very toxic substance. So you want to talk about that as well, and maybe provide them with some reading and go into some reading exercises to address some of your reading standards along the way. Another thing is here, I got this from Promotion Table Covers. It's a blog. It's a worksheet on reading aneroid sphygmomanometers. So I know it's kind of like a mouthful. Not every hospital, depending on where they're going to work, they're going to have a digital sphygmomanometer to read blood pressure. Sometimes they would already have aneroid, or maybe there's a power outage, and then you have to take the vital signs, the blood pressure of a patient. So you have to have an aneroid sphygmomanometer available. So this is one of the things that they teach in the career technical program on how to read something like this. So maybe you can start teaching them this. One of the things that we can talk about here, we can incorporate angles in here. We can talk about integers, circle graphs, areas of a sector. There's a lot of math that I can take this blood pressure worksheet and incorporate easily into my daily classroom instruction in adult basic ed. Another thing here is I can probably take the table and teach them how to read tables and charts and ratios along the way, which is contextualized content in math, which talks about approximate ideal blood pressure according to age, you know? So maybe you can say, and this will help the student determine later, okay, your blood pressure is too high or too low for your age. Now, there's other things that goes into blood pressure reading and really making sure you're communicating a lot, I mean, the accurate information to the patient. Of course, there's other factors such as weight that goes in determining the ideal blood pressure. But for the purposes of basic skills, you can start with this, so that when they go into the career technical program and go into the licensed practical nurse courses, then they're not going to be super familiar with what they're looking at, and they're not going to try to figure out how to read this table, how to interpret the numbers that are in the BP chart. Let's look at some language arts content. This is fairly common. A lot of ESOL teachers do this, is to incorporate vocabulary that they're going to encounter on the licensed practical nursing program. So this one is one that I got online, and I put in the website at the bottom of this slide, so you can look at it as well. This is actually a worksheet that I got. This worksheet is actually designed for an ESOL program, but you can easily take this and implement it in an ABE or a GED prep classroom. Most of these terms are also considered sometimes considered academic vocabulary that is tested on the GED test or the TABE test. So you might want to take a look and see, and focus on these vocabulary words. This is another thing that is very common in actually not only in the nursing career, in a lot of careers, especially in education. We have a lot of abbreviations and acronyms. You're going to cover this anyway in your ESL and your ABE and your GED curriculum. Why not go over some of the very common acronyms and abbreviations in the medical field? So this one is I got from the website, and the link is at the bottom of this page. And then reading. Let's talk about reading. So now we're gonna need the students in our program in adult basic education, we're already teaching them reading. Why not read something that is a little bit more technical, such as what is the body temperature and what is what are the different ways? So it's a different type of reading. We normally use a lot of literary text, but we have to incorporate some informational text in what we do anyway. So why not use some readings on various components of how to take the vital signs? So this one is defining one of the basic vital signs, which is body temperature, and explaining what are the different ways to take that. Now on the writing component, you might want to start teaching them how to complete a form. We do this a lot in ESOL, understanding forms and completing forms. Why not use a vital sign flow sheet and start training them how to fill out this one? Now, as you can see here, you have a signature and a comments column at the end. And you see, if you're going to insert a comment here, you can't insert a very, very long sentence in the comments. It has to, so that this is where you're really going to use your abbreviation techniques and your acronyms, but at the same time, your sentence shortening techniques that you learn in your language class. So very, very important that the student understands how to read this flow sheet, what to fill into this flow sheet, and then what type of information to incorporate. Like I said, the workforce preparation activities are already included in our standards, and there are, critical thinking, teamwork, employment, self-management, utilizing resources, using information, and understanding systems. Now, it doesn't have to have all of these, but you can identify at least one that can easily blend into the subject area that we do, or the IET component that we're trying to accomplish. Occupational skills, if that's not enough and you want more specific, you can check out this website developed by the Pennsylvania State University Institute on Study of Adult Literacy. They develop a list of workforce preparation activity competencies that you can copy and paste directly into your lesson plan to satisfy, and then make sure that how that's helping the student along the way. Now we're ready to do the final step, which is to do the single set of learning objectives. So we've developed a template for you, which is a template 2, which will combine all of your work from template 1, template 1A, and then you can add the assessment component and also formulate your single set of learning objectives. This is how template 2 looks like. So as you can see, the second column, occupational skills content objectives, that's part of template 1 and 1A. Basic skills component, also part of template 1 and 1A. In this case, they separated the workforce prep activity in a separate column, which is fine to me. It's all single copy and paste for me as well. And then the basic skills activities that you listed in template 1A is going to be in here. Now, the component that you have to fill in next is the assessment part. Who is going to do the assessment? Is it the basic skills teacher or the CTE teacher? Well, it's most advisable that we do the assessment ourselves to make sure that whatever we taught is being mastered or understood by the students. So this is where what type of assessment you want to use. Are you going to use a worksheet? Are you going to develop a quiz? Is it going to be a practical exam where some students are going to measure different people's blood pressure and or temperature? And then at the bottom, that's where you're going to now define your single set learning objectives. So those are, again, step 1. Step 2 is putting in the activities and the assessments. Step 3 is to formulate your objective. So now here's the example for what we're doing so far. So the same set of standards that I described earlier, okay, from template 1. Now I'm going to fill in the step 2 component, which is the missing component here. I'm going to copy and paste the resources and the activities here. I'm going to do measurement in numbers, and then we're going to do descriptive text on different vital signs, and then we're going to talk about common nursing vocabulary. The assessment would be maybe classifying numbers. It could be a quiz on vital signs, comprehension quiz, and then it could be a vocabulary quiz on the vocabulary part. Now, for the measurement component, for measuring temperature and blood pressure, I can do these things, reading the thermometer or reading the sphygmomanometer activities, lesson on writing on the vital signs flow sheet, and also using appropriate acronyms and abbreviations to fill in the flow sheet. Now, last but not the least, I'm going to fill in the assessment for that. So it could be a worksheet again, or even actually giving them a vital signs flow sheet to fill out, and then also a quiz on the abbreviations. Now we're ready to formulate the single set of learning objectives. Single set of learning objectives is just summary statements of all of the competencies that you've addressed. So really, this is kind of like the last step, and here's what I did. I wanted to do, the first one is, I kind of developed 2 instead of 1 for all 3, because I think measurement than the understanding component. So I want to first have my student develop or demonstrate their understanding of proper language and proper definition of what vital signs are. And these are going to be the competencies that is going to address. And then second is, I want my students to be able to accurately measure, at least the patient's temperature and blood pressure. It could be a worksheet or actually physically. And then these are the competency. So the competence are going to vary based on what activities you're going to do. All right, so that really is the last step. So what you're going to do now is I'm going to leave it up to you. You're going to now apply what you've learned. And this is going to be an assignment for you, you know, something that to do to follow up on your learning today is to look at the curriculum frameworks this time of culinary arts. Let's see if we can find some basic skills in here that require, you know, I mean, basics, you know, competencies in here that require critical basic skills to be supported. You can download the Florida Department of Education curriculum frameworks for culinary arts in the website I provided at the bottom of this slide. So really what you're only answering is, can you identify basic skills that are critical for the culinary arts students? And then sit in with your culinary arts teacher and talk about, okay, get some validation so that you know which competencies to prioritize in your classroom. Hopefully I was able to give you some really valuable information in formulating your single set of learning objectives. So now let's see if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat. June, did we have anything that's good? Okay, I see some really good. That one here that was mentioned here in the comments box is the conversion between Celsius and Fahrenheit. That's a really, really super, and sometimes it's very hard skill for some of our students because it's got lots of fractions in there. It's got, you know, you got a lengthy formula with multiple variables. So really good suggestion there. Thank you so much. Again, please keep on typing your own. I mean, if you have any other questions, I'll be able to answer this directly. Even after this, I could email you directly. If you have any particular questions, you can send your email to rcruz@floridaifthey.org, or we'll capture this after the webinar and then I'll reach back out to you with an answer within about 48 to 72 hours. I'm going to turn it over now to June for our closing.
Ron, thank you. And thank you everyone for your nice comments. This was a lot of great resources, so we really appreciate that. Okay, before you leave us today, we would just like you to take one more minute of your time today to address this feedback slide. There's 3 short questions, and while you're doing that, I just want to remind you that our next webinar next week on the 21st is going to be the IISPs for math. And remember, these IISPs are really designed to improve your students' TABE 11 and 12 math post-testing scores. So I know that you will not want to miss that presentation. So again, I thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for joining us today, and enjoy your rest of your afternoon. Thank you.